Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I hope that you guys have been having such a nice year so far. And I also hope that you have been loving the every 2 weeks schedule that we are now on. If you didn't listen to the first episode that I put out for the year, it kind of explains why I chose to do this, and how it's really going to help you to not feed into that overwhelm and actually be able to digest everything that you learn. So I'd highly recommend that you listen to that, because that really explains it for you there. I just didn't want to feed into more overwhelm, more decision fatigue, and all of that. And also, of course, with me becoming a mama this year, it's actually been so nice, to be honest, to not have to be like, shit, I have to record another episode. I got to record another episode, and really be able to like sit down, make these episodes super juicy. And we're going to go through seasons where there's definitely a few more episodes coming out and then a few less coming out, and just going back to how I started this episode, how I started this podcast, of just allowing it to flow a little bit more versus feel like I have to do a certain amount of stuff every week, which obviously just isn't really going to be sustainable with baby boy coming. And if you haven't seen on my Instagram, we announced that we're having a boy. We're very happy because we wanted a boy. And since I've been communicating with our spirit baby, who's now in me, I always knew it was a boy. Like, gun to my head, hand on my heart, it was a boy. And so in one of the videos, everybody was guessing girl. Everyone was like, with that smile, with that excitement, you're having a girl. And it was like, no, I got that excited because I was right. Like, that is why I was that excited, because I already knew we're having a boy, and then it was confirmed and I was like, yes, I'm right. Anyway, let's get into the episode. And if you're watching the video, excuse my undone pants, but like, we're at that stage where I can do them up because they're low waisted when I'm standing up. But once we sit down, the pants have to be unbuttoned. Today we are talking about why we overthink. This is one of my most asked questions that I get inside of my signature trauma healing program, Queen Alchemy. And I felt like it was about time that I actually helped you guys to understand the like chronic overthinking that so many of us really struggle with. I also feel like, just from noticing in my clients, it has gotten a lot worse in the kind of recent years. And I feel like we can just kind of attest that to social media. I was like really happy about that TikTok ban for like everybody's brains when it came back. And just like how we're so addicted to our phones and social media and whatnot. And it can really get us into this like chronic cycle of perfectionism and overthinking and just like fear. Like, it really puts us into this fight or flight. And then being in a fight or flight from other things, like, for example, chronic overuse of social media can then cause us to then kind of get into that loop of overthinking as well. Of course, Jelly is like so pushed up against me. So if you can see him, just that's what's happening right there. Okay, so let's dive into it. And before we do, I just want to remind you guys that Queen Alchemy is open for the first round of this year. I can't believe we are going into the 7th year of me doing this program. Like, it is truly incredible. I am so proud to be doing a program for this long of a time. Like, it really is a testament to how much the program works, to the results people get, and just the fact that, like, I feel like I'd be doing a massive disservice to society if I ever let this program go. Like, even if I got bored of it one day, I'm never letting it go, because the results that people get are just profound. Like, I could never take this away. Could never do it, because the results that it gets are just too good. So if you don't know what Queen Alchemy is, I highly recommend that you check it out. If you do know what Queen Alchemy is, I also highly recommend that you join us for this round, because obviously things might be changing with me becoming a mum and also a published author by the time we do the next round. This is going to be a really special round, as the last round of me being in my maiden era, pre-becoming a author, and all those things that are happening towards the middle of the year. Okay, let's dive in. So I used to be a chronic overthinker, like chronic. And remember, whenever we're working on ourselves, the goal is not perfection. I'm not going to sit here and say that, like, now I never overthink anything and now I'm never in my head and like blah, blah, blah. Like, that's not true. I'm human. I'm a woman and I'm human. And there are definitely moments where, of course, I'm overthinking things, but they are few and far between. And they honestly barely ever happen. Like, couldn't tell you the last time it happened. And I wouldn't classify myself as an overthinker anymore. Whereas prior to doing this work, I was definitely a chronic overthinker. And so the reason why people are overthinkers is because it is a safety mechanism. So when you were younger, there was something that was happening in your life, whether it was at school, whether it was at home. It also could be that maybe, you didn't develop overthinking when you were, sorry if by the way I keep stopping to pause. If you think like, is she burping? Like, I actually am. I'm just not like fully giving you the vocal sound effects because it's disgusting. But I have been having these incredibly deep belches for like the last 3 or 4 days, and they are vile. So if you kind of can hear that I'm like doing that thing when someone's talking and they're like stopping to almost like hold in a burp, that's what I'm doing. So just a little FYI. Anyway, onwards and upwards. When you were younger, it may not even been that you were like super young per se. We can also develop these coping mechanisms and these habits later on in life. I think a lot of people can focus really intently on childhood trauma, but there's also teenage years trauma. There's also young adult trauma. There is relationship trauma that could have happened, in your early 20s that has then caused a massive effect on your next relationship. I mean, you could have trauma in your relationship in early 30s, and then the next relationship that you're in, let's say in your 40s, that relationship has got all of this, like, you're trying to undo all of this trauma. You have all of this trauma from when you were 30 years old. That can happen. We don't pigeonhole yourself in thinking that you can only have trauma from the ages of like 0 to 10, because that's not true. It can also be from later on. But just for the sake of today, I'm just going to say when we were younger, and that can be teenage years, childhood, whatever. There was something or multiple things happening in your life that caused you to learn to overthink as a way to protect yourself. Essentially, what your brain and your body does is, because your body feels unsafe and your amygdala is then firing, and your amygdala is like the warning sign in your brain of like danger, danger. So when that's happening, what then happens is your brain then goes into overthinking. And so you develop this coping mechanism of, well, if I was to overthink, well, you're not thinking overthink, if I was to think a lot about this and foresee the potential future, I can then foresee the potential bad things that could happen. And I'm going to therefore know how to protect myself from it. So very often we're not overthinking for like good reasons, right? We're overthinking as a way to protect ourselves. We're overthinking about something because we're worried, we're anxious, we're nervous. Like, that's why we're overthinking, right? There's a negative feeling that comes with overthinking. We're not doing it out of like a positive feeling. And what we are essentially doing is we are essentially trying to forward think into the future and foresee a potential threat to our existence, or a potential possibility where we could be rejected, or we could be hurt, or we could be judged, whatever, like that kind of thing, where then we are able to know what the potential outcome could be and how to then protect ourselves. So the habit that I'll see quite a bit is people in Queen Alchemy that are chronic overthinkers, they're also chronic people pleasers. And obviously the two are going to go hand in hand, right? She's chronically overthinking because she's worried something bad could happen. She's worried she's going to be rejected. She's worried she's going to be judged by her parents. So she overthinks, she foresees the future. And then what she does is, by foreseeing the potential future, she avoids the potential possibility of her being judged and criticized. So her nervous system and her body can then feel safer. And so what she then does is she people pleases in some way, shape, or form, so that she's not rejected or judged by her parents or whoever it is, and therefore not feeling unsafe in her body. Okay, so overthinking and trauma, they are in bed together. Like, they go hand in hand. We don't overthink for no reason. We overthink out of some kind of fear response, right? When we are, and actually let me just backtrack for a second. I want to re-explain. There's a whole episode that I've done for you guys a while back. I feel like I should redo it, but there's a whole episode I did for you guys a while back. We'll link it below on what is trauma. Oh, guys, side note, the new podcast directory. Oh, it is the most orgasmic thing I've ever seen on my website. We have been working for about, I want to say like 2 years, to be honest, maybe even longer on this podcast directory because it is fully like, what's the word? Like custom, right? And I've not seen anybody do this ever. But basically, we have developed this like really incredible podcast directory. We already had one. You guys knew that, but it didn't have the greatest UI, user experience. This one, oh my God, you will drop to your knees. Like, honestly, prepare to call the ambulance. It is incredible. I am 99% sure that it will be done by the time this podcast episode is up. And I highly recommend that you use it because now you can search via things and when you're searching keywords, it's pulling them from the description. And we make sure that we put like keywords around that I'm talking about in the podcast, like in the description. So you are going to be able to go back to episodes that either you haven't listened to before or you have listened to, but a while ago and you want to re-listen to it because like scrolling through Spotify or Apple Podcasts is just like not the vibe. Like they need to have a search function in each podcast. Anyway, that business advice is for a separate thing. Let me just re-explain to you guys what trauma actually is because I want you to understand that like when I'm talking about trauma, you do not need to have had like some massive thing happen to you like abuse or be kidnapped or like seeing, somebody get murdered. Like you don't have to go through something that extreme to have trauma. Micro trauma is just as important for us to address because those micro moments of constantly not feeling enough, for example, that can add up into a really big feeling. And what we forget also is, if you grew up constantly not feeling enough, that can then put you in situations because you don't feel enough. You can then get into situations where then you experience trauma because of that. Okay, so let me just go through what trauma actually is for you guys. So trauma is the result of you being in a situation where you felt unsafe. Now, even if looking back as an adult, you're like, oh, the situation wasn't that bad, it's irrelevant because what matters is that in that moment, when the trauma happened, when you were at that age, you felt unsafe. You went into a trauma response as a way to protect yourself and survive. And what's really important to understand is that trauma is subjective. So the exact same situation, if somebody else went through that, it could be like, oh, it had no impact on them because it's not like trauma isn't black and white, right? Not everybody's body responds in the same way to a given event. It's subjective, okay? So in that moment where the incident happened for the first time, that could be the moment that your parents got divorced, the moment where your dad, told you you don't matter, the moment where your mum made you feel like you were worthless, the moment where the teacher yelled at you, the moment where the kids were bullying you in the playground, the moment where you were sexually assaulted. In that moment, your body didn't get to process the stress, the pain, the abandonment, the fear, the fight, flight, freeze response, right? Like you went into one of those responses because your body couldn't process what you were actually feeling in that moment. And you went into a trauma response, fight, flight, or freeze, because you just have to live, right? Now, as a result of that, the emotion from that situation stays like stuck in your body, quote unquote, and it becomes what people will then refer to as their wound. Now, even if you logically, mentally, whatever, understand that nothing bad happened when you're looking back, I was just being a kid or I was just being sensitive or whatever it is, it does not take away from the very, very real fact that your body in that moment when it happened felt physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, one or all of those unsafe in that moment. So the triggers that you now have as an adult, why you actually have them is that essentially it's your body's unprocessed emotion getting activated due to past trauma that you may or may not remember. Okay. Now, this is the key thing, when your body keeps getting triggered, it responds as though that initial traumatic incident is happening again. Of course, when it happens, when you get that trigger, you likely brush it down, sorry, brush it off, shove it down, whatever. You kind of you deal with it in some kind of way. You have some kind of coping mechanism. But what happens is that that emotional like snowball actually just gets bigger and bigger. So over time, that activation, that trigger feels bigger and bigger in your body because you continue to just suppress more and more and more of that energy and that trauma in your body. If you've seen my trauma cycle before, this kind of explains that. I've put it in a few emails that are going out this month. We'll also link a Instagram post below that explains this, and it has a picture of the trauma cycle. But I wanted to explain that so we all understood that trauma does not need to be some massive monumental thing like you see on the movies per se. Trauma can also very much just be a random moment where you felt unsafe. Maybe, to the average other person, like that wouldn't have a big impact on them all, but it's not about them. It's about you. Okay. So that is what trauma actually is. And just remember that when I'm referring to trauma in this episode about overthinking, and also all the episodes where I'm talking about trauma. You guys have been telling us how you have been loving the private podcasts that we've been putting together for different programs. And if you're in a program and there isn't one yet, just wait. We're slowly working on it all behind the scenes. But a lot of programs now have them, like Be a Lover Not a Mother, the Feminine Female Breadwinner. And we've also been like New Year's Eve bundle, Her Year has it. We've also been implementing it for parts of programs. So Queen Alchemy now has it with the meditations, for example. But what we've also done is for the free masterclasses. So if you have watched, or if you haven't, you absolutely need to. My masterclass, The Blueprint to Feminine Embodiment, is life-changing. Like, it is truly, truly life-changing. And a 1-hour masterclass, of course, turned into a 2.5-hour masterclass because I love to give. And I wanted to give you guys all of the information possible on helping you to really understand what it actually takes to be in your feminine. Not what Instagram says or Pinterest says or gives you that like list of like feminine, masculine. No, what it truly means to be embodied in your feminine energy. So we did that masterclass, 2.5 episodes. We understand that's a lot to sit down and listen to or watch. So what we've also done, yay, is we have broken up this masterclass into 13 mini episodes that you can get access to on a private podcast. So even if you have got the masterclass like prior to this and you're like, oh my God, I want to get the private podcast, all you have to do is go to the masterclass page. The link is below, and then you'll see the option to sign up to the private podcast. Follow those instructions and you will get the link to the private podcast in your inbox. And that is how you can then listen to these bite-sized chunks, which is also really nice because you can come back to bite-sized chunks if you need to re-listen to something. And it's right there on your phone. So you can easily be listening to the masterclass for the first time or for the 5th time on your walk. And this way there is literally nothing cock blocking you from getting this really, really valuable information that truly can change your life, or at least like validate why you potentially haven't been getting results because you've been doing it the wrong way. You've been thinking that dancing around your bedroom is going to make you feel feminine when actually you still feel like you're a control freak. So make sure that you have registered for my masterclass, The Blueprint to Feminine Embodiment. Either register it for the masterclass version so that way you can see all of the pretty slides and the pictures and absorb it that way. Or if you don't want to see the slides, you don't want to see the diagrams, then you can you can do both. Then you can register for the private podcast and listen to it on your phone when it suits you. So all the links are below. Let's jump back into the episode. Okay, so circling back to our overthinking. Like I was saying before, trauma activates the brain's survival mode, and our amygdala is then going to go ding, 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 danger, and then want us to like run away from the situation. And so in this situation, in this example with the overthinking, you're then overthinking as a way to protect yourself from getting hurt again. Overthinking, it is rooted in the part of your brain, and I'm going to go into your body in a second, the part of your brain where it's going to sound those alarm bells, if you will, to make you essentially run away in one way, shape, or form from the danger. Your way of running away is let me overthink so I can change my behavior to hopefully protect myself from what I think could happen happening. Does that make sense? So you're overthinking to change your behavior so that hopefully the thing that you are afraid of, being judged, being rejected, whatever, doesn't happen. That is what your brain is doing. Okay. When we are constantly in these responses of fight, flight, freeze, etc., and so our amygdala is firing all the time, trauma makes this area of our brain very hyperactive. And so why this is important is because there's a whole study basically in children with adverse child experiences. So basically that just means like trauma, but like, more on like the worst end of the spectrum, if you will. Emotional abandonment, abuse, a divorce that was really ugly. And so there's really bad co-parenting, emotional abuse. Did I say abandonment? Like very bad, what's the word? Like environment that they live in, like their home life, that kind of thing. What studies actually show is they have a bigger amygdala, and that's not a good thing, right? The amygdala is bigger because it is constantly in this fear. It's constantly trapped and just firing danger, 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 because there's so much fear in their brain and their body. So their amygdala is then bigger, which then means that more things seem like threats when they're not. So even to the average person, so even to some of you guys listening, when we're constantly keeping our body in these fight, flight, or freeze responses, and this could even be stuff where it's like, work is stressing you out. And it's not even that work is actually stressful. It's that your body has been so programmed to have a sense of urgency that you are like, whenever you're working, your body feels stressed, even though consciously you're like, this is not stressful. There is no urgency here. That's why I talk about with burnout, like you've got to be so careful thinking like work is burning me out. Everyone jumps to like work burns me out, work burns me out, work burns me out. But half the time, work isn't actually burning people out. It's their nervous system's response to things that has nothing to do with work. It has everything to do with their wiring and their need to change their wiring and reprogram their nervous system and like relax their nervous system and actually being able to expand their nervous system. So when we're constantly in this fight, flight, freeze, I've tried to say the sentence like 5 fucking times. What this does is that over time, like we become really our brain becomes really hyperactive. And so over time, small triggers can start to feel like really big things. Small moments of stress, we can blow into really big moments of stress, even when they're actually not. Like if you were really taking a third party look, you'd be like, this is not that stressful. Why am I responding to this in like such a big deal, in such a big way? Okay. So just remember, when I'm overthinking, it is a coping mechanism to predict and prevent future harm. Okay. So if you, for example, are really afraid of being rejected and judged and shamed by friends or colleagues or, people that you're dating, that kind of thing, you might then overanalyze every interaction that you have. You come home from a date, you're overanalyzing everything. You get off a job interview, you're overanalyzing everything and just like replaying the whole situation in your mind. And you do that because you are fearing being rejected again. That's why you're doing that. And so then what can happen is that the way that you then cope is before you go out on a date, you then like really overthink, really stress yourself out, try to like plan out everything to say, not to say, blah, blah, blah. And you feel like you have to change yourself. You feel like you can't trust yourself. When we're constantly overthinking, it can really affect our ability in like day-to-day moments for us to feel like we can actually trust ourselves to show up as our best self. And that can become really, really hard. And it can really take a beating in our self-confidence. Okay. So this is something that's like, as I said, we talk about this so much in Queen Alchemy. I always get questions about this in the Telegram group, and people heal their overthinking, not because we do a call on like how to heal your overthinking, not because of that, but because of the domino effect of when you heal your trauma and when you get your nervous system out of a state of hypervigilance, then we can stop overthinking. When we actually can bring safety back into the body, we can then get out of our head into our body. We can relax into our feminine. If you haven't watched my masterclass, The Blueprint to Feminine Embodiment, I would highly recommend you watching that. I talk a lot in that class about like how to be in your feminine, but not the way that Instagram tells you how to be in your feminine, like truly how to be in your feminine. And one of the biggest things that's needed for you to actually be in your feminine is safety. And so I go through all of the components that are actually going to help your body to feel safe. It is a 2.5 hour masterclass because I gave you guys an astronomical amount in there. We have actually turned it into a private podcast, and we've broken it down and edited it into like little bite-sized 5 to 15 minute chunks, so you can actually just kind of like plug into where you need. So I would highly recommend, even if you've watched the masterclass, when I initially did it, or you've watched it recently, you might also want to re-listen to it on the private podcast, just because like I really went into a lot of detail to help you guys to understand the mechanics that are actually required for you to be in your feminine. And one of the things is not chronically overthinking. So inside of Queen Alchemy, our focus is we heal your trauma, we do the nervous system regulation, we do all of the somatic work so that you can actually be in your feminine. Okay. And this is really important because sometimes we can not realize the cost or like the effect of the overflow, sorry, not the overflow, the flow on effect of when we don't heal these things. So the cost of overthinking isn't just like, oh, it's shitty and annoying, because like I get that, like been there. It's also that it impacts our mental health detrimentally. Like we all know it then causes us a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress. It's fucking exhausting. Like, could we just say that overthinking is fucking exhausting after a while, like really at any moment. Like even when I sometimes have my human moment and I'm overthinking, I'm like, oh my God, I have a headache after this. And like in terms of the energetic root, some of you were asking me about like what's the energetic root in an Instagram thing the other day or the other month. What is the energetic root of headaches? And I'm like, headaches is thinking too much. It is overthinking, and it's all this energy coming out of your body and going up in your head, and you are literally chronically overthinking. And that's one of my things that I'll get if I am overthinking something, and it really happens so rarely, but when I used to overthink a lot, I would get such bad headaches, and they'd be like front of head headaches, like right in the middle, front of head. I'm like, yep, she's overthinking. And for some people, they're not even aware they're overthinking. It is so deep in their subconscious. It is so like part of them. It is like an autopilot thing where they aren't even thinking, like they're not consciously overthinking. They're not sitting there and like their eyes are up and like they're like, as in like they're almost like looking up to the ceiling. When I say your eyes are up, like they're not even doing that behavior. It's just like your constant state of being is a state of overthinking. And that becomes then detrimental, yes, to your mental health, but also to your physical health. Because then we go into, yes, the headaches, the sleep problems, the insomnia, the tension, the stress that comes into your body and then manifests physically, the sore shoulders, the sore neck, and the fatigue, because your body is in a constant state of fight, flight, or freeze, right? So you're constantly releasing adrenaline. And like I said earlier, it's not just that, it might not even be a result of trauma as to why you're overthinking. It actually could have been this could be a habit that you've developed a little bit more recently, probably from social media. Like decision fatigue can be a really big one because you can't trust like your intuition. So then you start overthinking about which decision to make, and that creates decision fatigue. And perfectionism. And social media has obviously had a massive impact on people feeling like their lives have to be perfect and they have to be perfect all the time. All right. And like, and actually, I'll say with social media too, the cancel culture has made a lot of people that have audiences online become people pleasers and overthink every single thing they're posting, they're saying. They feel like they can't be themselves because they're so worried that somebody's going to rip them down, cancel them, say something mean about them. And at the end of the day, we're all human on the other end of the screen. And so that can be extremely hard on the body as well, causing obviously a flow on effect of a multitude of other things. Guys, I cannot believe it. We are about to go into our 7th year of running Queen Alchemy. I started this program in 2019. I've done over, I think, 25 now, or 20, 25 or 24 or 26, one of those numbers, a lot. I have done about 25 rounds of this program. It used to be called something else. So hence like this is technically the 15th round of Queen Alchemy. But when I tell you this program is unlike anything else you will find out there, I'm not just saying it. Yes, I'm biased because like it's my program, but just think about it in terms of this program has been running for this long successfully because it works. I mean, look at the testimonials. We have so many testimonials that it slows down the website page. So you have to go to another website page, like it's on a blog, to see more testimonials. And that's across the board. There's a bunch of one-on-ones in there as well. But truly what Queen Alchemy is Queen Alchemy is the program that is going to heal your trauma so that you can feel safe to be in your feminine in everything that encompasses. In Queen Alchemy, we are not doing surface level work. What I'm actually taking you through is my MYH, Monica Yates Health Trauma Healing Method. And it is a method that I have developed, and I've actually explained it in a few emails going out that we have through this launch as well. I have developed this over all of the years of doing this work, and it really is what has taken all of my clients to the places where they are now, and then them continuing to have that snowball effect where we get the emails 5 years after they worked with me and they're like, Queen Alchemy still is the thing that got me to this place in my life. So ladies, this is my official invitation for you to join this round of Queen Alchemy. It is the last round before I am a mother. It is also the last round before I am a published author. And I just think to myself, how could life change when these things happen? You know, we are planning ahead, but we also just don't know what's in store. So if you have been thinking about doing Queen Alchemy for multiple years or months, my biggest piece of advice is do not wait. If you heard some of the women talking about Queen Alchemy on the roundtable episode that I recently released, you would have heard that one of the biggest things that they all agreed on is they wish they did it sooner and to not wait. So don't keep waiting. Don't keep procrastinating on it. Do it now. Okay. So I was saying before that, what was I saying before? I was saying something like, oh, we'll get to the body in a second. I don't know. But overthinking, it happens in the mind. Listen to this. Overthinking happens in the mind, but it's stored in the body. Overthinking is not just a result of the mind. And so as a result of that, mindset work will never solve your overthinking problem. Think about it. Do you think the solution to overthinking is to put more energy into your brain and use your mind and do mindset work? No. Now we're adding to the overthinking. Now we're just thinking more. What we need to do, especially in this case, is use the body. But I say this, not just in regards to overthinking, but in regards to any kind of habit that we're trying to change that is a result of, some kind of programming or trauma. 80% of vagus nerve signals are sent from the body to the brain, and only 20% of vagus nerve signals are sent from the brain to the body. 80% body to brain, 20% brain to body. So what that means is if you're focusing only on mindset work, you've gotten yourself 20% of the results that are possible for you. You need to focus on not just the body work, although that's 80% of it. You also want to make sure that you're focusing a little bit on the mindset work. But when it comes to overthinking, especially, always in this case, I'm going to be working on the body with a client over the mind, because the mind isn't going to help anything, especially in the beginning. We definitely want to get them into their body. So whether you're trying to heal your overthinking or procrastination or perfectionism or people pleasing or struggling to speak your truth or your burnout or nervous system dysregulation, if you're doing mindset work, great, that's 20% of it, but it is not going to get you 100% of the results. You need to do the body work. And so inside of Queen Alchemy and inside of any trauma healing work that I do, I really have developed my MYH trauma healing method. So Monica Yates Health Trauma Healing Method. I've really figured it out of how to get to a client to where I want to get them to, which is a feeling of inner peace. I'm really big on there's no one size fits all. So even though I can say to you, like, I have this method, every client's going to be different. And there are instances where I haven't done my kind of like linear approach that I will generally do because it's not working for the client in front of me. We actually need to start at like number 5 and then come back to number 1 and then go to number 3 and then go to number 2. And that's completely fine. That ability to be malleable is really important that you find in a healer. And I will say a lot of coaches lack that. They don't know how to kind of like be malleable on the spot, depending on the person in front of them and their life and their history and their environment right now and all that kind of stuff. So inside of, just for this example, Queen Alchemy, but any way that you work with me on trauma healing, we're going to start with healing your trauma first from childhood, and then we're going to go into healing some of your core wounds, and then we're going to go. I wrote about this in a few emails. If you're on my email list, you'll be able to read about it this month of kind of like the steps. So make sure you check your emails. But we go through this process because I know the power after doing this work with people for 8 years. I know the power of starting with the body and then implementing the mind work as a use for, oh my God, my brain is like mush right now, baby brain. I'm bringing in some mindset work, thank you, to help with some of the integration of the trauma healing, because you don't want to just do trauma healing and then just like be left high and dry to like figure it out. You need to do the trauma healing and then integrate that into your life so it actually sticks, and then you become the embodiment, right? Then you actually embody the new version of yourself. And so that's where I think mindset work really comes in handy. It's using the mindset work as a form of integration and homework and whatnot, so that you as my client can actually then get to a place where this new version of you, you are living it out. It is embodied in your body. Okay. So this is why if you've been journaling, reading, doing the mantras, like, kind of doing these logical reframes, you're going to hit a wall. It might help a little bit, but you're going to, depending on the trauma that we're dealing with, depending on what you're wanting to work on. Money is an example where mindset works really, really, really well for money, because so much of our money programming is up in our head and we are constantly being fed scarcity every day. So we need to kind of counteract that. But to stick with the overthinking topic, that is something where you've got to be going into the body, because as I've spoken about, it's about safety, right? It's truly about safety. It's about healing the situations from your past that made you feel like I have to overthink to protect myself. And then it's about bringing in safety in the future. And part of that safety is also like boundaries. Part of that safety is being able to protect your energy. So there's those different components of safety, but that safety doesn't lie in your head. It lies in your body. Your ability to keep your nervous system calm and regulated all lies in the body. Okay. So for those of you that really want to work not just only on overthinking, but any kind of trauma that you're dealing with, not feeling worthy, confidence issues, body image issues, not being able to surrender during sex, relationship issues, communication issues, fear of being seen issues. I mean, the list is on the Queen Alchemy page. Queen Alchemy is the program for you. And the reason why it works with so many different cases is because we're healing the root cause. Your issues around, I always use this example, your issues around your relationship with food, the solution isn't that you need to go and do like a relationship with food course, because the reason why you have a sticky relationship with food is not because you don't know how to eat or you don't know how to like mindfully eat. The reason why is because the way that your relationship with food is showing up right now is actually a trauma response or a coping mechanism, depending what's happening for you. So the real way to heal your relationship with food is to heal the issue that's causing your relationship with food. The real way to heal the fact that you get so like defensive and you get explosive in arguments, for example, in your relationship. You don't need to be given a list of like sentences to say, if this is how you should communicate. You need to actually be able to feel safe to stay regulated in your body and speak your truth. We often forget, like, we know how to do a lot of these things. We know how to eat healthy. We know how to communicate in a loving way. And I'm going to give you guys, like, obviously helpful tips and education with all of those things. But the crux of the matter is that this beautiful domino effect happens when you heal the root. I'm sure you've seen testimonials from people saying, like, 5 years later, they're emailing us being like, since doing Queen Alchemy, like, these are all the things that have happened in my life. Like, I can fully feel and see the domino effect of this. And it just keeps building and building and building, because once you have that foundation of like rich soil in your garden, now your garden, aka you and your life, can actually flourish. But if you're just trying to like spread seeds to like boom into beautiful flowers on shitty soil, like maybe some will come up, but then they're going to die and they're not going to come up year after year after year and have really strong roots. So what we are here for is heal the root, create this really solid foundation, and I'm telling you, your life will flourish from there. Okay, so Queen Alchemy round 15 is open right now. If you have any questions, let me know. We are only having a 3-week launch, so it is quick. So please make sure that you do not miss the cutoff date. Fill out your form right now. And if you have any questions, just send us an email and we'll answer. Thank you guys for listening. I'll see you in the next episode.